William Carter tightened the straps on his backpack as he stared out the window of the small outpost. Outside, the red dust of Proxima Centauri's third moon stretched endlessly, a barren wasteland under a dim orange sky. The colony had been bustling just weeks ago, miners hauling ore, engineers repairing equipment, families laughing in the mess hall. Now, silence reigned. Humanity had left. Ships had come and gone, evacuating everyone back to Earth. Everyone except him and Laura. Laura sat at the kitchen table, sipping from a cracked mug of synthetic coffee. Her blonde hair was tied back in a loose ponytail, and dark circles shadowed her eyes. She hadn't spoken much since they'd decided to stay behind. William knew she didn't regret it. They both felt rooted here, tied to this desolate place by memories. But the weight of isolation pressed heavily on them both. "Do you think we made the right choice?" Laura asked finally, breaking the quiet. William turned away from the window. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I couldn't leave. Not yet." The evacuation order had come suddenly, with no explanation. One day, life went on as usual. The next, ships arrived, and officials ordered everyone home. No debates, no discussions, just orders. Rumors spread quickly. Some said it was because of resource shortages. Others claimed Earth faced some new crisis. But none of it made sense. Humanity had spent centuries expanding into the stars, building cities on distant planets, exploring uncharted systems. Why walk away now? William shook his head, trying to push the thoughts aside. He walked over to the table and sat across from Laura. "We'll figure it out," he said softly. "For now, we're okay." Laura nodded, though doubt lingered in her expression. What if something happens? What if whatever made everyone leave comes for us too? Before William could answer, the comm unit on the wall crackled to life. Both of them froze, staring at the device. It wasn't supposed to work anymore, not after the last ship departed. The screen flickered, displaying static, before resolving into a faint signal. A series of tones filled the room, low and rhythmic, almost like music. Neither of them moved. "What is that?" Laura whispered. "I don't know." William stood and approached the comm cautiously. His hands hovered over the controls, unsure whether to shut it off or try to trace the source. The tones continued, growing louder, more insistent. Something about them felt deliberate, as if they carried meaning. Laura joined him, peering at the screen. "It's coming from somewhere close. Maybe one of the abandoned stations." William hesitated. Every instinct told him to ignore it too. Focus on survival, but curiosity burned inside him. If this signal held answers, maybe it could explain why humanity had abandoned the galaxy. "We should check it out," he said finally. Laura frowned. "Are you sure? What if it's dangerous?" He glanced at her, then back at the comm. "We can't just sit here waiting for something to happen. Besides, what's the worst that could go wrong?" She gave him a look that suggested she could list plenty of possibilities, but didn't argue. Instead, she grabbed her coat and followed him outside. The airlock hissed as it opened, revealing the cold, empty expanse beyond. Together, they climbed into their rover, a battered machine, patched together from spare parts, and set off toward the coordinates displayed on the comm dot. As they drove, the landscape blurred into monotony. Red rocks jutted out of the ground like broken teeth, and the horizon glowed faintly with the light of a dying sun. The signal grew stronger with each passing kilometer, guiding them deeper into the desolation. Finally, they reached their destination, an old research station perched on the edge of a canyon. Its metal walls were rusted, and half the structure seemed ready to collapse into the abyss below. William parked the rover and stepped out, boots crunching against the brittle ground. Laura stayed close, scanning the area nervously. "This place looks abandoned for decades," she muttered. "Maybe," William replied, "but the signal's coming from inside." They entered cautiously, flashlights cutting through the darkness. Dust coated every surface, and the air smelled stale. In the main chamber, they found the source of the transmission, a strange device mounted on the wall, pulsing faintly with blue light. As William reached out to touch it, the tones stopped abruptly, and then everything changed. The moment William's fingers brushed the glowing surface of the device, a surge of energy coursed through him. His vision blurred, and for an instant, he felt as though he were falling not into darkness, but into something vast and infinite. Images flooded his mind, too fast to process fully. He saw stars being born, planets forming, civilizations rising and falling. Among these visions, one image stood out: humans walking away from the galaxy, retreating to Earth. It wasn't just a memory, it felt like a warning. Laura grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "William, are you okay?" He blinked, disoriented, and took a step away from the device. His heart pounded in his chest, and his breath came in short gasps. I don't know what that was," he stammered. "But it showed me something big." "What did you see?" Laura asked, her voice trembling. Before William could answer, the room around them shifted. The walls shimmered, dissolving into light. For a moment, they both thought they were hallucinating, or worse, losing their minds. But then the light solidified into shapes, towering crystalline structures, intricate patterns etched into their surfaces. They weren't in the research station anymore. They were somewhere else entirely. "Where are we?" Laura whispered, gripping William's hand tightly. "I don't think we're on the moon anymore," William replied, his voice barely audible. The space they now stood in was enormous, far larger than any human structure he'd ever seen. The air hummed faintly, vibrating with an energy that made his skin tingle. In the distance, a figure approached, being unlike anything they'd encountered before. Its form was fluid, shifting between light and shadow, and its presence radiated power. William instinctively stepped in front of Laura, shielding her. The being stopped a few feet away, its shape stabilizing into something more defined. Though it had no face, William sensed it was observing them intently. Then, without speaking, it communicated directly into their minds. "You are the last," it said, its voice resonating not as sound but as thought. "Your kind has abandoned this place, leaving behind imbalance." Laura squeezed William's hand harder. "What do you mean? Who are you?" "I am Kale," the being responded, "a guardian of this galaxy. Your species played a vital role in maintaining harmony among the stars. Now that you have left, the systems falter, worlds die, the cycle breaks." William frowned, struggling to understand. Why does our absence matter so much? Humanity isn't the only intelligent life here. Kale's form flickered, almost as if it were considering how to explain. Each species contributes to the whole. Yours brought innovation, adaptability, and resilience. Without you, the balance cannot hold. Already, cracks spread across the cosmos. Laura shook her head, overwhelmed. But why would humanity leave in the first place? Why would they abandon everything they built? "That is a question only your kind can answer," Kale replied. "My task is to preserve equilibrium. With your retreat, chaos spreads. If nothing is done, the galaxy will collapse." William swallowed hard, glancing at Laura. Her expression mirrored his own fear and confusion. "What do you want us to do?" he asked finally. Kale hesitated, its light dimming slightly. "You have two choices. Return to your world and warn your people of what is to come, or remain here and join me, becoming part of the guardians who protect this galaxy." The weight of the decision pressed down on them immediately. Neither option seemed easy. Returning to Earth meant facing a humanity that had already turned its back on the stars. Staying meant leaving behind everything they knew, even each other, to serve a purpose they barely understood. "We need time to think," William said after a long pause. Kale nodded, or, at least, it seemed to. "Time is limited. Choose wisely." With that, The crystalline chamber dissolved once more, and they found themselves back in the research station. The device on the wall was dark now, its glow extinguished. William leaned against the wall, trying to steady himself. Laura sank onto a nearby chair, her face pale. "What do we do?" she asked quietly. William didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared at the device, replaying Cale's words in his mind. No matter which path they chose, one thing was clear. Their lives and, perhaps the fate of the galaxy depended on their next move. William paced back and forth in the dimly lit research station, his boots scuffing against the dusty floor. Laura sat silently at the table, her hands clasped tightly together. Neither of them had spoken for several minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. The choice Cale had given them weighed heavily on both their minds. "We can't just sit here," William said finally, breaking the silence. "We need to decide what to do." Laura looked up at him, her blue eyes filled with uncertainty. "What if we make the wrong choice? What if going back to Earth doesn't change anything, or worse, what if staying here means losing everything?" William stopped pacing and sighed. He knew she was right. Both options came with risks, but doing nothing wasn't an option either. If we go back to Earth, at least we'll have a chance to warn people. Maybe they'll listen, maybe they won't. But if we stay here and become whatever Cale wants us to be, we might never see home again. And if we don't act fast enough, Laura added softly, the galaxy could fall apart completely. Billions of lives, human and alien, are at stake. The enormity of the situation hit them both at once. They weren't just deciding their own fates. They were deciding the fate of countless others. For a moment, neither of them spoke, the weight of responsibility pressing down on them. Finally, Laura stood up. "Let's go back," she said firmly. "Earth is where this all started. If anyone can fix it, it's humanity." William nodded slowly. "All right, we'll go back, but getting there won't be easy. The Stellar Whisper isn't exactly in top shape, and we don't know what kind of dangers we'll face along the way." "Do we have a choice?" Laura asked. Her voice was steady now, tinged with determination. "We've survived this long out here. We'll find a way." They spent the next few hours preparing for the journey. The Stellar Whisper, their small but reliable ship, had been sitting idle since the evacuation. William checked the engines, while Laura inspected the navigation systems. Supplies were scarce, but they managed to gather enough food and water to last the trip if nothing went wrong. As they worked, William couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. Every creak of the outpost's walls, every flicker of the fading lights reminded him how fragile their situation was. When they finally climbed aboard the ship and powered it up, relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. The journey to Earth would take weeks, even with the ship's outdated warp drive. As they left Proxima Centauri's moon behind, the vast emptiness of space stretched before them. Stars twinkled faintly in the distance, but the galaxy felt quieter than ever. It was as though the universe itself was holding its breath. On the third day of their voyage, trouble struck. The ship's sensors detected a massive radiation storm ahead, blocking their path. William frowned as he studied the readings. "We can't go around it'll add too much time to the trip. And we can't stop either. The ship's shields aren't strong enough to handle prolonged exposure." Laura leaned over his shoulder, examining the data. "What about rerouting power from non-essential systems? Could that boost the shields temporarily?" "It's risky," William admitted, "but it might work." They worked quickly, diverting energy from the heating system and auxiliary lighting to reinforce the shields. As the storm engulfed the ship, alarms blared, and the temperature inside dropped sharply. Laura wrapped herself in a blanket, shivering, while William monitored the controls anxiously. For hours, the storm battered the Stellar Whisper, shaking it violently. Just when it seemed like the ship might not hold, the turbulence subsided. and they emerged into calmer space. Exhausted but relieved, they shared a brief smile. "This isn't going to get easier, is it?" Laura asked, her voice weary. "No," William replied, "but we'll make it. We have to." And with that, they set their sights on Earth, knowing the hardest part of their journey still lay ahead. The closer the stellar whisper got to Earth, the more uneasy William and Laura became. The once familiar blue-green planet now appeared strange through the ship's viewport. Thick clouds swirled across its surface, hiding most of the continents beneath a gray haze. It looked less like the vibrant home they remembered, and more like an alien world. "This doesn't feel right," Laura murmured as she adjusted the ship's descent trajectory. "Something's off." William nodded, his jaw tight. He'd been thinking the same thing, but hadn't wanted to say it aloud. The last time they'd seen Earth, it was bustling with life cities, glowing at night, oceans teeming with ships, skies filled with aircraft. Now, silence greeted them as they entered the atmosphere. The ship's sensors picked up faint signals, scattered broadcasts from what appeared to be small settlements scattered across the globe. There were no signs of large cities or organized governments. Humanity had changed drastically during their absence. They landed near what used to be New York City, though it was barely recognizable. Towering skyscrapers stood crumbling, overtaken by vines and moss. Streets were cracked and overgrown, and the air carried the scent of damp earth and decay. It was eerie, like stepping into a post-apocalyptic movie. "Looks like nature took over," William said, grabbing a backpack filled with supplies. "Let's see if we can find anyone." Laura followed him cautiously, her hand resting on the grip of a small laser pistol strapped to her belt. They wandered through the ruins, calling out occasionally, but there was no response. Just when they started to think the area was completely abandoned, a figure emerged from the shadows, a woman in tattered clothing, her face lined with exhaustion. "Who are you?" she demanded, holding up a makeshift spear. Her voice was sharp, wary. "We're not here to hurt you," William said quickly, raising his hands to show he meant no harm. "We came back from one of the colonies. We need help." The woman lowered her weapon slightly, studying them. "You're from the stars. No one goes there anymore. Not since the Great Retreat." Laura stepped forward. "We know about that. That's why we're here. We need to talk to someone who understands what's happening to Earth and to the galaxy." The woman hesitated before nodding. "Follow me. My name's Rachel Monroe. I'll take you to my group." She led them through the ruins to a cluster of tents set up inside the shell of an old building. A dozen people sat around a fire, cooking something that smelled faintly of roasted vegetables. Everyone turned to look at William and Laura as they approached, their expressions ranging from curiosity to suspicion. Rachel introduced them briefly, then gestured for them to sit. "Tell us why you're here," she said, her tone firm, but not unkind. William explained everything: the evacuation order, their encounter with Kale, the warning about the galaxy's collapse. As he spoke, the faces around the fire grew darker. Some listened intently, others shifted uncomfortably, looking away. When he finished, Rachel sighed heavily. "It's been years since anyone cared about the stars. People are too busy surviving down here. Governments fell apart after the retreat. Most folks don't even believe space travel is possible anymore. It's all just stories to them." "But it's real," Laura insisted. "If we don't do something, the whole galaxy will fall apart. Earth won't be safe either." One of the men standing nearby scoffed. "Even if we believed you, what could we do? We don't have the technology or the will to fix this." William clenched his fists, frustration bubbling inside him. There has to be someone left who remembers how to build ships, repair satellites, anything. We can't just give up. Rachel studied him for a long moment before speaking. "There might be one person who can help. His name's Daniel Hayes. He used to work on early interstellar projects before everything fell apart. But finding him won't be easy. He lives alone, far from here. Then we'll go to him, Laura said firmly. If he's our best shot, we can't waste time. Rachel nodded reluctantly. I'll draw you a map. But be careful. The roads aren't safe these days. As they prepared to leave, William glanced back at the group huddled around the fire. Their faces reflected fear, doubt, and resignation. He realized then that convincing humanity to care about the galaxy again wouldn't just require evidence, it would require hope. And hope was something in short supply on this broken planet. The map Rachel gave them was hand-drawn and faded, but it was enough to guide William and Laura toward Daniel Hayes' remote hideout. The journey would take several days on foot, navigating through overgrown highways and treacherous terrain. As they set out from the ruins of New York City, the weight of their mission pressed heavily on them. Every step felt like a race against time, though neither of them knew how much time they truly had. The first day passed quietly. They followed the remnants of an old highway, its cracked pavement swallowed by weeds and vines. Birds chirped overhead, and the wind rustled through the trees, creating a deceptive sense of calm. But as night fell, the landscape grew darker and so did their thoughts. We're walking into the unknown again, Laura said softly as they made camp under the stars. She stared into the small fire they'd built, poking at the embers with a stick. What if Daniel doesn't believe us? Or worse, what if he can't help? William sat beside her, his knees pulled up to his chest. We don't have another option, he replied. If anyone can figure this out, it's him. Rachel said he worked on interstellar tech before everything fell apart. That makes him our best chance. Laura nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. I just hope we're not too late. The second day brought new challenges. A sudden rainstorm drenched them, turning the dirt paths into muddy rivers. Their boots squelched with every step, and the chill seeped through their clothes. By midday, they encountered their first obstacle, a collapsed bridge blocking their path across a wide river. The water below churned violently, fed by recent rains. There's no way around it, William muttered, scanning the area. We'll have to cross upstream, where it's shallower. They trudged along the riverbank for hours, until they found a narrow section where the current wasn't as strong. Even then, crossing was dangerous. Laura slipped halfway through, her leg plunging into the icy water. William grabbed her arm and hauled her back onto solid ground, both of them soaked and shivering. This keeps getting better, Laura joked, weakly, wringing out her shirt as they continued onward. By the third day, exhaustion began to wear on them. Their food supplies were dwindling, and their bodies ached from constant travel. Just as frustration started to creep in, they spotted smoke rising in the distance, a thin gray plume cutting through the dense forest canopy. That must be it, William said, pointing ahead. Daniel's place. They approached cautiously, unsure of what to expect. The cabin came into view after a short hike, a modest structure surrounded by makeshift defenses, barbed wire, wooden stakes, and even a few rigged traps designed to ward off intrusions. A man stood outside, chopping wood with steady, deliberate swings of an axe. He looked older than William had imagined, with graying hair and a weathered face, but his movements were strong and precise. Stay where you are, the man called, out sharply when he noticed them. He reached for a rifle propped against the wall of the cabin. We're not here to hurt you, William shouted back, raising his hands. Rachel Monroe sent us. At the mention of Rachel's name, the man paused, lowering the rifle slightly. Rachel, how do you know her? She helped us find you, Laura explained quickly. We need your help. It's important. The man studied them for a moment longer, before nodding. Come inside. The interior of the cabin was cluttered, but functional. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with books, tools, and salvaged electronics. Maps and diagrams covered the tables, detailing star systems and spacecraft designs. Daniel gestured for them to sit, then poured 3 cups of tea from a kettle simmering on the stove. So, he began, sitting across from them. What brings to strangers all the way out here? William took a deep breath. We came back from one of the colonies. We've seen what's happening. The galaxy is falling apart because humanity left. We think you might be able to help us fix it. Daniel listened intently as they recounted their story, the evacuation, Kale's warning, the crumbling state of Earth. When they finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples thoughtfully. "You're asking me to rebuild something that's been dead for decades," he said finally. "Even if I could, why should I? Humanity abandoned the stars. Why should we care now?" "Because it's not just about us," Laura insisted. "It's about everyone. Everything. If we don't act, the entire galaxy will collapse, including Earth." Daniel stared at her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then, slowly, he nodded. "All right, I'll help. But it won't be easy, and we'll need more than just me." For the first time in days, William allowed himself a flicker of hope.
3 months after humanity left the Council, the galaxy was falling apart. Half the member species were at war with each other. The great trade networks that had connected thousands of worlds lay in ruins. Entire sectors had become lawless wastelands where only the strongest survived. General Patricia Stone stood in the war room on Luna, studying the tactical displays that showed the breakdown of galactic civilization. Red markers indicated active conflicts. Yellow showed economic collapse zones. Blue marked humanitarian disasters. The map was mostly red and yellow now. "The Altair crisis has spread to 22 systems," reported Colonel Helen Clark. "What started as a mining dispute has become a full war between the crystalline collective and the machine consciousness. Piracy has increased by 600% in the Outer Rim," added Captain Lisa Brooks. "Without human patrol fleets, cargo ships are easy targets." "The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 14 more systems," said Admiral Kevin Hayes grimly. "They're using the same tactics they used at Kepler, but now nobody can stop them." Patricia nodded. The Zephyrians had always been aggressive, but human fleets had kept them in check. Now they were free to expand their empire through conquest and terror. President Dale Morrison received daily briefings about the chaos. Each report brought news of new disasters, failed states, and humanitarian crises that would have been easily prevented when humans were involved. 43 star systems have declared independence from the Council, reported Secretary Nancy Carter. Most are forming their own military alliances for protection. The Galactic Communication Network is failing, added Technology Secretary Paul Johnson. Without human technicians to maintain the quantum relay stations, long-distance communication is becoming impossible. Refugee fleets are heading toward our borders, said Defense Secretary Robert Chen. Millions of aliens are fleeing the war zones. Dale studied the reports with growing concern. The collapse was happening faster than anyone had predicted. What had taken centuries to build was being destroyed in months. Dr. Amanda Foster watched the medical catastrophe unfold from her laboratory on Earth. Diseases that human teams had controlled for generations were spreading unchecked across alien worlds. The rigid alien medical systems couldn't adapt quickly enough to new threats. "The Rigel plague has jumped to 6 new species," reported Dr. Carl Lewis. "The death toll is approaching 10 million. The industrial accident on Vega Prime has contaminated 3 continents," added Dr. Frank Murphy. "Toxic chemicals are spreading through the water supply. The genetic virus in the Centauri system is mutating faster than alien researchers can study it," said Dr. Jenny Adams. "They've requested our help 17 times this week." Amanda felt torn between professional duty and personal anger. As a doctor, she wanted to save lives. As a human, she remembered how the Council had dismissed human deaths as unimportant. "We could end these outbreaks in days," Carl said quietly. "Our adaptive treatment protocols could save millions of lives. And next year they'll vote to ignore human suffering again," Amanda replied firmly. Let them learn to solve their own problems. The economic collapse was total. Director Paul Johnson managed Earth's financial networks from his office in Geneva, watching alien economies crash one by one. The complex systems that humans had built to enable galactic trade were failing without human oversight. The universal credit has lost 95% of its value, reported analyst Dave Martinez. Most worlds have stopped accepting it entirely. The Andromedan Banking Confederation has collapsed, added financial expert Lisa Adams. They're requesting emergency assistance to prevent total economic failure. Interstellar insurance companies are going bankrupt, said trade specialist Ben Phillips. Without human-protected shipping, the risk of loss is too high to calculate. Paul shook his head. Humans had created the trust networks that made galactic commerce possible. They had built the insurance systems that protected interstellar trade. Without human expertise and reputation, aliens were reverting to primitive barter economies. Captain Alex Rivera commanded the observation post that monitored council space from the edge of human territory. His sensors tracked the growing number of conflicts as alien civilization collapsed. The Seven Worlds War has expanded to include 12 species, he reported to Earth Command. What started as a trade dispute is now a war of conquest. The Aquatic Union has split into 6 separate factions, added intelligence officer Kate Wilson. Each faction is fighting the others for control of water worlds. The Silicon Mind Collective is expanding aggressively into biological space, reported tactical officer Tim Foster. They claim organic species are inefficient and should be replaced. Without human peacekeepers to maintain order and human diplomats to negotiate peace, every disagreement became a war. The careful balance that had kept hundreds of species living together was completely broken. Fleet Admiral Rebecca Turner received reports of increasingly desperate alien attempts to restore order. But without human expertise, every solution failed. Quickly, the Council has formed a new peacekeeping force, reported Captain Ryan Clark. It's made up of volunteers from 12 different species. How effective are they? Rebecca asked. They fought each other more than they fought the actual threats, Ryan replied with dark humor. The crystalline beings tried to give orders to the machine consciousness. The aquatic species couldn't operate in environments without water. The whole force disbanded after 2 weeks. The Andromedan Confederation attempted to mediate the Vegan expansion, added Colonel Patricia Stone. Their diplomats were taken hostage and their mediation ship was destroyed. Rebecca wasn't surprised. Alien diplomacy was rigid and formal. Human diplomats had learned to be flexible, creative, and persuasive. They could find solutions that satisfied multiple parties and prevent conflicts from escalating. The humanitarian crisis was beyond anything the galaxy had seen in centuries. Dr. Frank Murphy monitored the disaster from Earth's medical center, watching diseases and accidents that human teams could have easily handled kill millions of beings. The asteroid mining accident in the Tau Ceti system has killed 50,000 workers, reported Emergency Coordinator Elena Rodriguez. Toxic gases are spreading through the mining stations. The plague ship from Rigel has infected 4 trade stations, added Medical Coordinator Jenny Wilson. The alien quarantine procedures are failing to contain the outbreak. Industrial pollution on 17 worlds has reached critical levels, said environmental specialist Carl Foster. Without human cleanup technology, entire ecosystems are dying. Frank remembered how human medical teams had responded to similar crises. They would have been on scene within hours, bringing advanced treatment equipment and flexible protocols that could adapt to any situation. Now aliens were dying by the millions because their medical systems were too slow and rigid to cope. The political collapse was equally complete. The Galactic Council still met on Nexus Prime, but they had no real power. Without human enforcement, Council decisions were just suggestions that most species ignored. Speaker Vexithala's crystal body had grown dim and cracked from stress. She called emergency sessions every day, but the delegates only argued among themselves. The careful diplomatic. Procedures that humans had helped develop over centuries were falling apart. The Zephyrian delegate has withdrawn from all negotiations, she announced during one session. They claim the Council has no authority over their expansion. The machine consciousness refuses to recognize biological rights, added Delegate Morketh. They say organic life is obsolete. The Aquatic Union demands water world exclusivity, said Senator Quilax. They threaten war if other species colonize ocean planets. Without human mediators to find compromises and build consensus, the Council was just a forum for threats and ultimatums. Captain Roger Williams led a humanitarian mission to the edge of the disaster zone. His ship carried medical supplies for refugee camps, but he was ordered not to enter Council space directly. The refugee situation is getting worse, he reported to Earth Command. 15 million beings have fled the war zones in the last month. Are we providing assistance? Asked Admiral Brooks. Medical supplies and food only, Roger replied. No military protection and no direct intervention. Through his ship's sensors, Roger could see the devastation. Burning space stations, wrecked cargo fleets, abandoned colonies. The galaxy that humans had helped build and protect for 3 centuries was destroying itself in months. On Earth, public opinion was divided. Some humans felt vindicated that aliens were finally learning humanity's value. Others worried that the complete collapse might eventually threaten human worlds too. We proved our point, said Senator Mike Carter during a television interview. Maybe now they understand what they lost. But millions of innocent beings are dying, replied journalist Sarah Martinez. Don't we have a moral obligation to help? Where was their moral obligation when humans were dying at Kepler? Mike answered, they made their choice. Now they live with the consequences. The galaxy was learning the hardest lesson of all. Some things are only valued after they're gone, and sometimes, by the time you realize what you've lost, it's too late to get it back. The great experiment in galactic civilization, built over millennia and protected by human strength for 3 centuries, was collapsing into chaos and war. 6 months after humanity left the Council, the galaxy was unrecognizable. What had been the greatest civilization in known history was now a collection of warring tribes fighting over the ruins of their former greatness. President Dale Morrison stood at the window of his office, looking up at the stars. Earth's orbital defenses glowed softly in the night sky, protecting the human homeworld from the chaos beyond. His aide, Secretary Nancy Carter, brought him the latest reports. 37 species are now at war with each other, she said quietly. The Galactic Council has lost all authority. Most members have stopped attending meetings. What about refugees? Dale asked. 47 million beings have fled to the Yao. Borders of human space, Nancy replied. They're living in refugee camps on the edge of our territory. Dale nodded grimly. The numbers grew every day as more aliens fled the violence that consumed their worlds. But Earth's policy was clear. Humanitarian aid only, no military intervention. Ambassador Helen Clark ran the refugee camps from the space station above New Geneva. She watched the endless streams of alien ships arriving each day, carrying families, who had lost everything to wars, plagues, and economic collapse. We're processing 200,000 refugees per day, she reported to Earth Command. Most are requesting permanent settlement in human space. What's our response? Asked Admiral Rebecca Turner. Temporary shelter, medical aid, and food, Helen replied. But no permanent settlement unless they can prove they actively supported human interests during the crisis. It was a harsh policy, but necessary. Earth couldn't take in 50 million refugees without destroying human society. Only aliens who had been true friends to humanity earned the right to stay. Dr. Amanda Foster led the medical teams treating refugee populations. Despite her anger at the Council's betrayal, she couldn't ignore the suffering of innocent beings. Her teams worked around the clock to treat diseases, injuries, and malnutrition. The medical situation is stabilizing in the camps, she reported. But the reports from inside Council space are getting worse. How much worse? Asked Dr. Carl Lewis. The Rigel plague has killed 25 million beings, Amanda said. The industrial accidents on 15 worlds have poisoned entire continents. The genetic virus in Centauri space is mutating so fast that alien medical systems can't keep up. We could stop all of that, Carl said sadly. Our teams could end those crises in weeks. Yes, Amanda agreed. But they chose to reject our help. Now they deal with the consequences. The final humiliation came when a single battered ship approached Earth's orbital defenses. The vessel was barely functional, its hull cracked and its systems failing. But its passenger was someone Earth had to receive. Speaker Vexithala, former head of the Galactic Council, arrived at Luna Station aboard her damaged ship. The proud crystal being who had once dismissed human concerns now came begging for help. Admiral Rebecca Turner met her personally at the docking bay. Vexithala's crystal body was dim and cracked with stress. Her once brilliant blue color had faded to dull gray. "Admiral Turner," Vexithala said, her voice no longer ringing like bells, "I request an audience with your leaders." "Speaker Vexithala," Rebecca replied formally. "You're in human space now. I'm the one who decides who gets to speak." The proud alien leader actually bowed her crystal head. "Please, my people are dying. The galaxy is dying. We need your help." Rebecca felt a moment of pity, but she remembered the dead humans at Kepler. "Follow me." President Morrison received the alien leader in the Oval Office. Vexithala stood before his desk, her crystal form diminished and broken. Around the room, human officials watched the being who had once ruled a galaxy, now reduced to begging. "Mr. President," Vexithala began, her voice cracking like breaking glass, "I come to formally apologize for the Council's treatment of humanity. We were wrong. We were arrogant and blind to your true value." "Go on," Dale said quietly. "Without human strength, wisdom, and compassion, galactic civilization has collapsed," she continued. "Half the species are at war, trade has stopped, diseases are spreading unchecked. Billions of beings have died in conflicts that humans could have prevented." Secretary of Defense General Tim Foster leaned forward. "What exactly are you asking?" "We're asking humanity to return to the galaxy," Vexithala said desperately. "To restore peace and order, to save what's left of civilization." "Under what terms?" asked Secretary of State Nancy Carter. Vexithala's crystal body flashed with shame. "Any terms you name. The Council will accept any conditions." Dale looked around the room at his advisors. They had discussed this moment for months, planning for the inevitable alien surrender. But seeing the proud speaker reduced to begging was still shocking. "Humanity will not return to the Council," Dale said firmly. "That organization showed its true nature when it ignored human suffering." "Then what?" Vexithala asked desperately. "Humanity will consider individual partnerships with species that demonstrate genuine respect for human lives and interests," Dale continued. "We'll help those who prove they value our alliance. The rest can solve their own problems." General Patricia Stone outlined the conditions. "Any species wanting human protection or assistance must sign formal treaties acknowledging human authority in military and diplomatic matters. Human lives must be given equal protection under all laws. Human contributions must be properly recognized and compensated." "And the conflicts?" Vexithala asked. "We'll stop wars between our allies," Rebecca Turner said. "Everyone else can fight until they learn better." It was a harsh new order, but the galaxy had no choice. The old system was dead, destroyed by alien arrogance and short-sightedness. Captain Roger Williams commanded the first human fleet to return to Council space in 6 months. His mission was limited: evacuate humans from the refugee camps and establish protective zones around allied worlds. As his ship approached the former Galactic Council headquarters on Nexus Prime, he saw the devastation. The great space station was dark and nearly empty. Most of the alien delegations had gone home to fight their own wars. "It's like a ghost town," reported his navigator, Lieutenant Tim Foster. "The whole place is falling apart." Through the view screen, Roger could see the ruins of galactic civilization. Wrecked ships drifted in space. Abandoned stations slowly rotated in the darkness. The trade routes that had buzzed with activity for centuries were now empty corridors haunted by pirates. Dr. Frank Murphy led the first medical mission back into Council space. His target was the refugee camp on the edge of the Centauri system, where 2 million beings were dying from the genetic plague. "It's worse than our worst projections," he reported as his teams began treatment. "The virus has mutated 17 times since we left. Alien medical systems couldn't adapt fast enough." His human medical teams worked with their usual efficiency. Within days, they had the outbreak under control. Within weeks, they had eliminated it entirely. The same plague that had killed millions was stopped by methods that seemed like magic to desperate aliens. "How do you do it?" asked Dr. Vexana, the insect-like being who had begged for human help months earlier. "Your medicine works so fast," Frank smiled grimly. "We adapt, we innovate. We don't follow ancient procedures that take years to change." Captain Alex Rivera established the first new human base in former Council space. The station orbited a strategic location between human territory and the remaining peaceful alien worlds. His mission was to protect human allies and monitor the ongoing conflicts. "The Zephyrian Empire is still expanding," he reported to Earth Command. "They've conquered 22 systems in the last month." "Any response from the Council?" asked Admiral Brooks. "What Council?" Alex replied. "Most species have withdrawn completely. The few remaining delegates spend their time arguing about who's to blame for the collapse." The new order was harsh but effective. Species that accepted human authority received protection, medical aid, and economic assistance. Those that refused were left to face the chaos alone. Within a year, 12 species had signed formal alliance treaties with humanity. These allies formed stable islands of peace and prosperity in a galaxy torn by war. Their economies thrived under human management. Their people lived safely under human protection. The others learned hard lessons. The Zephyrian Empire, which had started the crisis by attacking Kepler, found itself surrounded by human-protected allies. When they tried to expand further, they met human fleets that ended their aggression quickly and decisively. The machine consciousness discovered that their efficient algorithms were no match for human adaptability in combat. The Aquatic Union learned that controlling water worlds was pointless if they couldn't trade with anyone. One by one, the species that had rejected human partnership came back begging for acceptance. But humanity was selective now. Only those who could prove genuine change and lasting commitment earned the privilege of human alliance. Ambassador Jake Martinez, who had delivered humanity's withdrawal speech, returned to Nexus Prime 1 year later. The Great Council chamber was mostly empty now, with only the representatives of human allies attending the few remaining sessions. "It didn't have to end this way," he told the handful of alien delegates. "All you had to do was respect us as equals. All you had to do was care about human life."